It's funny. The word confidence gets thrown around so casually that it's almost lost its weight. We say it like a magic bullet, just be confident, as if that alone will open every door. But what we're really talking about isn't the kind of confidence that shouts. It's the kind that doesn't need to. There's a distinct difference between the confidence of youth and the confidence that comes with age. When you're younger, confidence is often about performance, proving yourself, being seen, being loud enough, visible enough, desirable enough. But as you grow older, and I say this not just chronologically, but emotionally, you realize that real confidence isn't about being noticed. It's about being known, and more importantly, it's about knowing yourself. So when we talk about flirting as an older man with younger women, we're not talking about reverting to some caricature of masculinity. We're not talking about trying to be 25 again, or mastering some set of pick-up lines. We're talking about embodying the kind of presence that doesn't compete for attention. It commands it quietly. Psychologically speaking, presence is the most underrated aphrodisiac. Presence is what happens when you're not split between who you are and who you're trying to be. And people feel that, especially women, especially younger women, who are often surrounded by men still trying to prove something, still performing. When you show up without that need, when you carry yourself with grounded certainty rather than inflated ego, you immediately distinguish yourself. You don't need to chase, because you are the gravity. There's a fascinating tension here. Because while a younger man might approach with energy, a flurry of compliments, maybe a performance of charm, the older man has something infinitely more erotic: attunement. Attunement is that subtle psychological awareness of not just what someone is saying, but how they're saying it. It's reading between the lines. It's noticing the shift in her tone, the flicker of hesitation in her voice, the way her energy changes when she talks about something she loves. And when you reflect that back to her, not to impress, but to see her, you're doing something that goes far beyond flirting. You're building erotic intelligence. Now, this is where many older men get it wrong. There's this anxiety that if you don't wow her immediately, you'll be dismissed. So what happens? You lean in too much, too fast. You overcompliment. You try too hard to be charming. And suddenly, you've gone from grounded to needy, from magnetic to performative, and the energy shifts. What's needed is not more effort, it's more clarity. Clarity about who you are, what you offer, what you're not trying to be anymore. Clarity allows you to flirt with a kind of elegant restraint. You're no longer trying to prove your value. You're inviting her to discover it. This kind of confidence also has a philosophical core. It's rooted in what I call sovereignty. A sovereign man doesn't seek permission to be who he is. He doesn't need approval to validate his identity. And ironically, that very detachment from needing to be liked is what makes him so deeply attractive. Because he becomes safe, not in the boring, sanitized way, but safe in the way that says, you can show up as yourself here. You don't have to perform for me, because I'm not performing for you. This is especially potent when engaging with younger women, because many of them, despite appearances, are exhausted by the constant pressure to impress. They live in a world saturated with filters, social, emotional, digital. And when they meet someone who doesn't need the mask, who isn't overwhelmed by their beauty or trying to consume it, it's disarming. It's rare. It's sexy. Let's take a moment to address the fear that's behind the bravado. The fear that maybe she won't be interested if you don't play the role. That your age is a disadvantage. That confidence, unless wrapped in a youthful package, won't land. But here's the truth. Your age is not a liability. It's your leverage. What matters is not how many years you've lived. It's how you've lived them. If you bring your full self, your depth, your stories, your self-awareness into the room, you're already ahead of 90% of men she'll encounter. So yes, flirt, be playful, but don't chase. Lead with presence, lead with groundedness. Let her feel the weight of your attention, not because you're trying to win her over, but because you're genuinely curious. Because you're comfortable in silence. Because your sense of self isn't hanging in the balance of whether she says yes. Confidence isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about being the quietest one everyone still hears. The one who isn't trying to be chosen, but chooses. The one who doesn't need to impress because he already knows who he is. If confidence is what draws someone in, emotional intelligence is what keeps them there. And this is where older men often underestimate their value. There's a cultural narrative, particularly in Western society, that tells us men become less desirable with age while women peak earlier. But that myth collapses the moment we shift from superficial attraction to sustained desire. Because real, lasting magnetism comes from emotional presence, and that, more often than not, is a gift of experience. Younger women today are surrounded by men who may be emotionally expressive, but not necessarily emotionally intelligent. There's a difference. Expression is about saying what you feel. Intelligence is about knowing what you feel, why you feel it, and how to translate that awareness into connection, not control. And here's where you, as an older man, have a massive advantage if you choose to lean into it. You've lived. You've likely known joy and grief, success and failure, betrayal and devotion. You've had time to metabolize your emotional experiences, to look at yourself not just through the eyes of desire, but through the lens of accountability. And that kind of self-awareness, when brought into a conversation, especially a flirtatious one, creates a kind of safety that is deeply erotic. Because emotional intelligence isn't about being soft, it's not about being overly sensitive or agreeable. It's about attunement. It's the ability to read the room, to pick up on emotional shifts, to sense when to lean in and when to pull back. And more importantly, it's the ability to do this without making it about you. Too many men flirt to win, but the emotionally intelligent man flirts to connect. He listens, and not just with his ears. He listens with his eyes, his body, his intuition. He pays attention to tone, timing, tempo, and that kind of attention, that's rare, that's sexy. You see, flirting isn't just about being clever or charming. It's about calibrating. It's about knowing when to match her energy, when to contrast it, and when to challenge it playfully. It's the ability to make her feel seen, not scanned, desire, not consumed, understood, not analyzed. And this is where your experience becomes your power. Because you've learned, hopefully, that silence isn't something to be filled, that not every pause needs a punchline. That curiosity is more powerful than compliments, and that in the space between what's said and unsaid, something intimate can emerge, something that isn't performative but real. A woman will feel this immediately. She may not be able to name it, but she'll know it. It's that subtle shift in the way you make her feel, not just admired, but understood, not just entertained, but mirrored. And again, this is not about playing a role. Emotional intelligence isn't a tactic. It's a way of being. If you're using empathy as a way to get somewhere, attention, validation, sex, it backfires. Because it becomes manipulation disguised as insight. The moment your listening has an agenda, it ceases to be connection. It becomes strategy. So the question becomes, are you listening to understand or listening to impress? Younger women, especially those who are emotionally intelligent themselves, can spot the difference. And when they sense real presence, when they encounter a man who can sit with complexity without needing to resolve it, who can handle nuance without shrinking into simplicity, that's when the walls start to come down. That's when the conversation becomes electric. Think about it. Most of her interactions with men are likely filtered through two things: performance and pressure. But what happens when she meets someone who brings neither? Someone who has nothing to prove, no timeline to rush, and no need to control the outcome. That man becomes an oasis, a breath of fresh air, a disruption of the ordinary. And here's what's fascinating: emotional intelligence also allows you to flirt with powerful restraint. You don't flood her with compliments. You don't dominate the conversation. You create space. And in that space, she feels both your interest and your respect, your desire and your discipline. You're not chasing her. You're inviting her. That's a very different energy. It's one rooted in sovereignty, not scarcity. One that says, I see you, I enjoy you, but I don't need you to complete me. And that freedom, your emotional independence, is what makes you so deeply attractive. This is the core of erotic intelligence. It's not about being flawless. It's about being fluent in emotion, in timing, in tone. It's about being able to navigate intimacy without fear or fragility. And I'll say this to any man in this room or watching this video who has ever thought he was too old. To attract a vibrant younger woman, emotional intelligence doesn't age. In fact, it tends to grow more refined over time. If you've done your inner work, if you've learned from your past rather than dragging it around like baggage, then you're not behind. You're ahead. So stop trying to compete with youth. Lead with your depth. Because the man who can make her feel emotionally safe, intellectually stimulated, and erotically seen, that man will always have an edge. Let's talk about compliments. Most men lean on them as their first move. You're beautiful. You look amazing. Has anyone told you how stunning you are? And while these compliments may be well-intentioned, they rarely land in the way you think they do, especially with younger women who are constantly receiving them, often from men who don't see them so much as they see an opportunity. You see, when you compliment what a woman already knows, her appearance, you're not setting yourself apart. You're repeating what she's probably heard 5 times today. But more than that, you're focusing on what's visible, not what's personal. You're mirroring what the world already sees, not what you uniquely notice. Real flirtation doesn't start with flattery. It starts with curiosity. Curiosity is what awakens attention. It's what signals, I'm not just looking at you. I'm interested in who you are, in how you think, in what moves you. And that is something most people rarely receive, especially in the early moments of connection. Think about it. When was the last time someone flirted with your mind before your body? Asked a question that made you stop and actually reflect. That kind of presence is disarming. And in a world dominated by surface-level interactions, it's deeply, deeply attractive. So instead of saying, you have gorgeous eyes, you say, you have this look like you're already 10 steps ahead of the conversation. What's going through your mind right now? That's not a line, it's an invitation, an opening. It tells her you're watching not just her appearance, but her energy, her essence. This is what I call flirting through observation. You notice how she tucks her hair behind her ear when she's thinking, how her tone shifts when she talks about her art, her work, her frustrations. You let your curiosity guide your interaction. Not a script, not a set of tactics, but a real-time dance of discovery. And here's the psychology behind it. We all crave being seen beyond our surface, especially women who are often hyper, sexualized or reduced to their looks. A man who can reflect something back to her that isn't obvious, that feels intimate, immediately triggers a deeper layer of engagement. Now, to be clear, this isn't about interrogating someone. Curiosity doesn't mean flooding her with questions. It means tracking the conversation, following the breadcrumbs, asking yourself what's she really saying beneath her words? Where is her excitement peaking? Where does she go quiet and why? It's the ability to stay present enough to follow her thread, rather than pulling the conversation back to yourself. And here's where most men get stuck. They think they need to impress, but impressing someone is about you. Connecting with someone is about them. Flirting through curiosity also helps bypass the power dynamics that can sometimes arise between older men and younger women. Instead of trying to control the interaction through status, wealth, or bravado, you create equality by showing genuine interest. You're not placing her on a pedestal, nor are you trying to dominate her attention. You're simply saying, I want to know you. Not because it gets me something, but because who you are is interesting to me. And that subtle shift changes everything. There's also a kind of philosophical beauty in curiosity, because at its core, curiosity says, I haven't figured you out yet, and I don't want to. It resists certainty. It allows room for surprise, for nuance, for evolution. And that's where eroticism lives. In the unknown, in the unfolding, not in the already defined. Compliments, when overused or unoriginal, create predictability. Curiosity creates tension, the good kind, the kind that leaves space between two people, the kind that allows her to step toward you because she feels invited, not cornered. And let me be very clear, this is not about manipulation. This isn't a trick. It only works when your curiosity is real, when you actually care about the answer, when you're not fishing for an opening to pivot back to yourself or to move the interaction forward faster than it's ready to go. True curiosity slows the pace. It deepens the moment. It shifts the dynamic from pursuit to presence. And when that happens, you stop being just another man trying to flirt. You become the man who sees her, who listens without agenda, who touches her not physically first, but intellectually and emotionally. That's rare, and rare is magnetic. So the next time you're in conversation with a woman, especially one younger than you, resist the urge to default to praise. Resist the urge to categorize her, define her, or impress her. Instead, explore her. Ask her something no one else has thought to ask. Reflect something she may not even have noticed about herself. And do it not to gain her approval, but because you find people fascinating. Because you know that desire isn't born from validation. It's born from discovery. Flirtation at its highest form isn't performance. It's presence, and presence, when laced with curiosity, becomes unforgettable. One of the most misunderstood elements of attraction is availability. We've been told that showing interest, being consistent, making an effort, these are the noble behaviors of a respectful suitor. And they are to a point, but there's a subtle, critical distinction between being available and being too accessible. Between offering your presence and offering yourself on a platter, What younger women often find attractive in older men isn't just the maturity or confidence. It's the containment, the ability to hold their own space, to resist being consumed by the moment, or worse, by the need for validation. It's the self-possession that says, I have a life, you're welcome in it, but I'm not trying to escape into yours. Attraction lives in tension. That's not game playing, it's human psychology. Erotic energy doesn't thrive in full certainty. It thrives in the space between knowing and not knowing, between closeness and autonomy, between desire and restraint. And here's the irony. Many men believe that if they just show up more, text more, compliment more, initiate more, that will increase their chances. But what they don't realize is that over-availability actually dulls attraction. When you make yourself too accessible, too predictable, too eager, you remove the mystery. You remove the charge, you leave nothing for her to lean toward, nothing to wonder about, nothing to want. Being playfully unavailable is not about being dismissive or aloof. It's not about ghosting or ignoring or manipulating. That's not restraint, that's immaturity dressed up as power. What we're talking about here is a more refined, adult form of erotic tension. One that says, I'm here but I'm also sovereign. I desire you but I don't need to possess you. I'm open but I'm not empty. In practice, this looks like pacing your interactions, not bombarding her with attention. It means letting a message breathe before responding. It means maintaining your rhythm, your structure, your passions, regardless of who walks into your life. It means not rearranging your world for someone who hasn't yet earned that kind of access. Younger women, particularly those who are emotionally and intellectually attuned, pick up on energy. They can sense when a man is grounded in his own life and when he is waiting for someone to save him from it. They are drawn to men who are in motion, not standing still waiting for a relationship to happen. And this is where you, as an older man, can truly differentiate yourself. Because by this point in life, you should have things that matter more than dating. You should have passions, pursuits, friendships, routines that nourish you, with or without a woman in the picture. And when a younger woman sees that you won't drop everything for her, that you have your own gravity, she leans in. Not because you withheld, but because you're anchored. This kind of flirtation isn't obvious. It's subtle. It's in the delay between her message and your reply. It's in the way you smile, but don't immediately ask for her number. It's in the warmth of your presence, coupled with the mystery of your self-sufficiency. You're not playing hard to get. You're just not trying too hard to be gotten. And here's where things get interesting. When you are playfully unavailable, you invite her into a different relational dynamic. One where she becomes curious, one where she starts to wonder, because most women are used to being pursued, chased, adored on command. But when a man gives her just enough to feel seen, but not enough to feel certain, she steps into the dance. She participates, she moves toward you, not out of obligation, but out of desire. Desire cannot breathe in a vacuum. It needs space, and space requires boundaries. When you abandon your boundaries in the name of pursuit, you might get attention, but you lose respect. And without respect, desire fades. So yes, be emotionally available, be attuned, be present, but also be discerning. Be selective with your time and energy. Let her feel that you have chosen her not because you're desperate for connection, but because you're already full and now you're curious what might overflow. This is the essence of mature eroticism, desire with restraint, attention without attachment, curiosity without desperation. There's a deep psychological truth at play here. What we value most is rarely what's handed to us too easily. We value what we have to reach for, what we have to wonder about, what challenges us just enough to awaken our pursuit. Not our insecurity, but our passion. So when you flirt, let her feel your presence, but let her earn your attention, not as a test, but as an invitation to mutuality, to a shared unfolding, to a dynamic that is alive, not transactional. Don't collapse your world into hers. Let your world be strong enough that she wants to visit. Let her know there is more to discover, not just in her, but in you. That's what keeps the spark alive. That's what keeps the energy in motion. Because at the end of the day, desire is not about proximity. It's about polarity. And polarity requires space. When you give a woman nothing to reach for, she stops reaching. But when you give her something to lean toward, a presence, a mystery, a life already in motion, she doesn't walk away. She follows.